and welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. It is episode number 75, Doc. Already 3/4 of the way to episode number 100. It is something else. My name is Vito Jerome Chirco, as you already know, and the guy sitting across from me at the desk inside the lovely Sterling Heights Detroit Sports Podcast Network studios is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, it's a great day. Get a chance to talk to you, do some great podcasts. Lots of news and notes regarding the Detroit Tigers. A former Tiger has made the Hall of Fame. We're definitely going to talk about that. But like we said last week, like we teased, I have a job to do. And like you tried last week, and I know you were objective, your job last week was to try and convince me to maybe potentially be a season ticket holder and have some hope with the Detroit Tigers. And I today am going to try my absolute best to try and convince you that this Detroit Tigers team, even though they've not made a great amount of moves, they still have an opportunity to do some things. And unfortunately, you got to start off with bad news in that the Kansas City Royals have gotten worse in the last week, unfortunately, with the death of pitcher Yordano Ventura. Unfortunately, that was a crazy day. I know that sometimes, when these athletes maybe speed in their home countries, unfortunately got into an accident. So, step one, the Kansas City Royals are worse. Now, the Detroit Tigers, they're going to be forced to compete with the Cleveland Indians. And what they've done is, I think they've built morale throughout that locker room by standing pat. You've seen that throughout the caravan, throughout the week. Several of the teammates, several of the guys have come out and said, listen, hey, we stuck all together. We've had a great offseason. We're really happy that the organization decided that we're going to keep everything together and not make too many moves. So that means now you have a unified front. You have a team that's really together. And you have a team that was this close to making the postseason. So now at the starting point, you have a team that's going to be willing to maybe even give that extra 10% effort, knowing that the organization maybe has, whether it be forced or not, the organization has stuck with all these guys. Okay? Now, step number one in my efforts to convince you. This is a team that is going to rely on young pitchers to do some things. And when you look at a back end of the rotation of Fulmer, Boyd, Norris, those guys all have arms that can strike people out. Those guys, if they evolve, if they stay healthy, okay, health is going to be key to this formula. If they stay healthy, I expect 12 to 16 wins across the board from all those guys. Okay,
12 to 16 across the board from Matthew Boyd. By the way, he wants to be called Matthew now. I heard that from George Sipple in a recent video posted on Freep.com.
Yes. Okay, Matthew.
Okay, that's far-fetched, I think. I'm sorry. Matthew Boyd now. We should
you're
be calling him. I'm a skeptic already, but keep trying. I'll let you go.
Daniel Norris, Matthew Boyd, Michael Fulmer. You got to give me this. Michael Fulmer could be a draw this year. This could be a guy that, I'll even make a bold prediction, he's going to have a no-hitter in the 2017 season. He's got the stuff. I believe that he's going to go out there and try to earn, the number 2 spot, but most likely the rotation is going to be, whether you believe it's Verlander or Zimmerman, it's going to be Verlander, Zimmerman, Fulmer, Norris, Boyd. And I think those 5 guys are going to try to recreate some good stuff. And I do believe that they're going to be a unit that's going to be solidified. And those 5 guys, if they stay healthy, could take you to the promised land. Now, on the offensive side, you saw the emergence of Justin Upton. You saw the emergence and the continued great success of J.D. Martinez. Couple that with the prolific offensive performances by Miguel Cabrera, which you can expect. The key thing, again, for him is to stay healthy. Victor Martinez, I believe that Victor Martinez, whatever program he has worked on, there's been a fountain of youth. He's still offensively productive. And last year, he had several clutch hits, a lot of key home runs. Again, battled the injury bug here and there, but I do believe that, hey, if you haven't heard any significant injury bugs from his offseason workout, that's a plus. Now, at the same time, you're going to maybe have an infusion at center field. I know they made a move, but I'm not really thrilled with that move at all. I do believe that if Jacoby Jones and whatever platoon you're going to decide to use out there in center field, I do believe that could be a successful unit out there in the outfield offensively. Can they improve upon their defense? Yes. Now, the Tigers' infield defensively could be one of the highlights. They could be well improved in that area. If Nick Castellanos can improve offensively, provide 20 to 25 home runs, Jose Iglesias, solid at defense. Ian Kinsler is a solid second baseman that could covet, a lot of attention. Maybe even could be used as a trade bait to improve the squad. Miguel Cabrera. Now, James McCann is going to be called upon to do some more things offensively. If you get improved offensive performance from James McCann, Jose Iglesias, and you get somewhat of a similar performance offensively, and you lessen the strikeouts, hey, I think this is a team that could compete and could do some things. Now, do you think this team is going to go, 4-14 versus Cleveland next year? No. I would argue if you just go 500 against the Cleveland Indians, 9 wins, 9 losses, I think you have an opportunity to do some things and to make the gap a little bit smaller than most people believe. Now, the biggest drawback I would say is this. Yes, Brad Ausmus is the manager, and that's the biggest thing I know you're upset about. Now, I'm going to argue this. I do believe there's an opportunity for him to grow and learn from his past mistakes. I do believe that the organization as a whole is going to be using numbers a little bit more. They're going to try their absolute best to instill a situation where they're going to utilize analytics, advanced sabermetrics to a point where it's actually going to be useful. And so with that said, I do believe this is a team that's going to compete right up until the end of September. Maybe they reach their goals, maybe they don't. But I do believe that this team staying together has an opportunity to do something that we've all wanted, which is to get to the postseason and advance.
Did you see me yawn there?
I did. You yawned, and I think you might have
I think everybody else is falling asleep too. So nice try. Very nice attempt, but I think you fell a little bit short, as I did, because of the realistic portrayal of what we see with this Tigers roster going into opening day, and you didn't speak anything about the leaky bullpen, which is smart of you, but there is that leaky bullpen, porous bullpen. What do they do at the back end of the pen? Are they going to be as good with the closer and K-Rod, a veteran who's an aging vet at this point, was solid for the most part, blew a few saves, but how about the rest of that pen before K-Rod, getting the ball to K-Rod? Can they do so efficiently more often? Last year, they struggled with that. And guys that were expected to be big-time arms in the back of that pen struggled to do that, to get the ball to K-Rod, such as Alex Wilson, Justin Wilson, Bruce Rondon, your boy, Bruce Rondon, the flamethrower, who's going to be, I think, better. But with all that being said, we spoke of the same stuff, really. And you criticized me and gave me a low C or a D mark for my attempt to convince the fans to believe in the Tigers and their chances of winning in 2017. And you said pretty much the same thing about the health, too. You said it's important to be more healthy. JD Martinez, Nick Castellanos, who maybe can hit 20 to 25 home runs, Castellanos. Well, the thing is, he'll do that in 2017 if he's healthy. So these guys really, and it comes into play with Miguel Cabrera even. Victor Martinez, who wasn't good, by the way. He wasn't producing clutch hits in the second half of last season. Now, you kind of didn't mention that to the fans out there, forgot to mention that fact, and maybe you're using some alternative facts that we'll discuss in Two Bad Hombres this week as well. But my point is that you fell a little bit short, and you might want to do something to rectify that, maybe come up with a little bit of a revised edition of your persuasion of getting Tigers fans on the bandwagon, because I still think more people than not have gotten off the bandwagon in recent memory and aren't willing to get back on it, even though there were some positivity expressed at the Tigers Caravan, at the Tiger Fest on Saturday, where we saw that Brad Ausmus named Justin Verlander to be the opening day starter for the 9th time for JV, and he's second all-time in Tigers history behind one notable name. We'll bring that up later in a little Vito's trivia question for you, Doc. I'll probably stump you again, as I do every single time, it seems like, here on Tigers Talk. But on this quite monumental edition, we have some fresher topics to also discuss, and including Pudge Rodriguez getting into the Hall of Fame in his first attempt, his first year of eligibility, that means. And not everybody saw that coming. I didn't myself, but he just got in, receiving more than 75% of the vote, which is what you need. You need at least 75% to get into the Hall, and he got 76% of the vote, meaning he received vote stock on 336 of 442 ballots. So Pudge did what he had to get in, and he is a first ballot Hall of Famer now, which at first caused me to wince a little bit and to feel like he was undeserving. But once I read more into his stats, his career notes, I was kind of more convinced myself to believe that Pudge deserved, actually, Pudge Rodriguez, that is, deserved to get in on his first try to the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So I think it was actually the right call now. I am kind of taking back what I said on a previous edition of Tigers Talk, where I said that I don't think he was deserving of getting in his first try, and because of the alleged PED usage on behalf of Pudge Rodriguez. And if you read Juiced, the explosive expose of the steroid era by Jose Canseco, you would have found out that Canseco injected Pudge with roids. And now we can't believe everything in that book to be factual. Maybe alternative facts once again. Sorry to the Trump administration for bringing that up once again, but I had you guys. Anyways, though, Canseco, can we believe fully that book and what he put in there? Now, some of the guys that were included in that book ended up being caught using roids. Were fully, convicted, let's say, of using roids. So he was right a lot more than he was wrong in that regard. And I think it tells you he did use roids at one point of his career, but there's a lot to say about Pudge for why he still probably should have gotten in on the first attempt. Doc, what do you have to say about all that regarding Pudge and whether or not he should have been voted in his first try?
Once I heard the news, I was on board. I mean, you look at it, what he did with the Detroit Tigers. He was the first free agent that started the new wave, the new era of the Detroit Tigers. You got to remember, the Detroit Tigers were in the basement. They were a squad that was just, teetering on, becoming irrelevant. And Dave Dombrowski was trying his absolute best to change the culture. And who was the first free agent that he brought in that was, impactful? Pudge Rodriguez. He was a Tiger in 2004 to 2008. He ended his career catching more games than any other catcher in Major League Baseball history, made 14 All-Star games, 13 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Slugger Awards, and was the AL MVP in 1998. This was a catcher that had a lot of tools, was a very feisty player, a really energetic type player. And when he came to the Detroit Tigers, you saw that, okay, he learned how to, and he was very able to handle the Detroit Tigers pitching staff, especially with the likes of Justin Verlander at the time. And many people felt like, hey, once Pudge Rodriguez came here, that was the moment, that was the key free agent that allowed other people to say, you know what, that Tiger team, they're pretty serious. They might be willing to do some things. And even though that first run to the World Series was a bunch of young talent, they also kind of blended, experience as well, bringing in the likes of Kenny Rogers and things like that to help the squad, to help the young pitchers like Justin Verlander and the like. So it was an interesting blend, as well as, pairing them up with Jim Leyland. So for me, I'm okay with Pudge Rodriguez. And plus, the book Juiced was one of those books where it was written by a guy that had an agenda, and his agenda was to sell books. And so in that case, in terms of the evidence based upon that book, I would lean toward a little bit more of another thing, and we'll talk about it just in a quick second. But the evidence presented in the book was hearsay. For example, you know what I mean?
If he injected Pudge with the roids himself, it wasn't just hearsay by Jose Canseco, but he had a tainted image. He did. And, him painting this portrayal of all these players, what can we really believe? Can we believe all of it to be true? We can't. So I'll give you that much, Doc. But a lot of the guys ended up coming out to have taken roids, like after the fact got suspended for taking roids too.
But I don't believe Pudge ever tested, positive for anything.
He never did. So he avoided that. You are right, Doc.
But the visual evidence that people saw, the one offseason, once the rumors and innuendo started to get around, the offseason prior, he was all Hulk, kind of bulky.
Yeah.
Then he came back and it looked like he was a little bit skinnier.
A slim dog now, slim dude, and he was always pudgy. He was, Doc.
But it was eye-opening,
yes,
the amount of weight loss that he had. And some people would say that once you stop taking the roids, then your muscle mass is going to decrease significantly. So I think that was the more visual proof. But obviously, the baseball writers at this point in time have started to kind of ease their, anger and frustration toward those that have taken steroids. Obviously, the big dogs that have kind of tested and lied and things like that, the baseball writers have kind of played judge, jury, and all that. But they elected Pudge Rodriguez. I think it's well-deserved. And obviously, it's a nice honor for the Detroit Tigers because I believe that, he was the first Tiger named to the Hall of Fame since, I believe, Al Kaline.
Mr. Tiger himself, whose final season was 1974. So his Hall of Fame induction was in 1980. You have to go all the way back 37 years ago to the last time a former Tiger got into the Hall of Fame. And I wanted to say this. 2 other big-time reasons why Pudge got in on the first ballot, in my opinion. Well, first and foremost, former MLB Commissioner Bud Selig has been voted in now via the 2017 Today's Game Era ballot, which considers players, executives, and managers which made a high-level impact on the game from 1988 to present. And remember, Doc, and all my listeners out there for this edition of the pod, he's the man who oversaw the highly controversial steroid era and served as league commish from July 9th of 98 until being succeeded by present Commissioner Rob Manfred in 2015. One notable reason right there to start off. Another one to follow is about Mike Piazza getting in last year after 4 years of being on the ballot. And he had his name attached to steroid allegations. And then there is the defensive metrics and Gold Gloves attached to Pudge's name, which account for a lot of the terrific stats of his Major League Baseball career. And 13 Gold Gloves in total, which is a Major League Baseball record for backstops. He can never have that taken away from him. And Doc, we can say this much about a player defensively being solid. Well, roids don't really influence that. It's more about the offensive numbers. And when you become bulky or pudgy, as in Ivan Pudge Rodriguez, well, if you're still getting it done with the glove and throwing out runners at a proficient rate, that says something about you outside of what steroids can do to impact your game offensively, which maybe helped him out while he was in Texas in his first year in Motown, which we've got to bring up, too, that his post-age 30 productivity was there. It was solid. After playing in no more than 111 games from 2000 to 02 with the Texas Rangers, he played in a $144 games in 03, hit .297, drove in 85 runs, and won a World Series title with the then Florida Marlins. And then he joined the Tigers the following season and followed up his very impressive 03 season with an even more impressive 04 campaign. And it saw him record the second highest batting average, Doc, in his first year in Motown of his whole entire Major League Baseball career at, you could say, almost astonishing, a .334 clip. And during his age 34 season, he helped guide the Tigers, as we know, to the 06 Fall Classic when they came out of nowhere. And 3 years prior, in 03, they were a laughingstock, had lost 119 games. The following season, he comes on board, and then Maglio Ordonez followed him in the offseason after Pudge signed on the dotted line with the Tigers. And after Maglio, Kenny Rogers, as you noted, joined the club in time for 06, along with closer Todd Jones. So he started the trend of big names or bigger names signing with the Tigers. So without him, the franchise would have never been fully resurrected, to say the least. And he deserves serious credit for that as well. And that's why I have silenced on my stance from before when I said he didn't deserve to get in on the first attempt of Pudge. I think it's now where we can say, I can admittedly say that Pudge deserved to get in on the first ballot. So I'm proud to say that at this point, that I've come to that realization, that he deserves to get in like he did on the first ballot. And more power to him because of what he did with the Tigers, too. I was always a fan of Pudge, and admitting that today, that he deserved to get in on the first ballot, it's a nice actualization for me. It really makes me feel well to say that much about Pudge, a player that I loved once again when he was in Motown.
Now, you have a guest coming up, Ryan Schuiling, 92.1 FM in Lansing. I'm very interested to listen to your interview, and I'm wondering if you're going to ask about Pudge and maybe, just maybe, having his number and jersey retired, because a lot of people are kind of iffy and a little bit on edge because the Tigers are kind of known for only retiring the numbers of Hall of Famers, and the two most popular Tigers that do not have their numbers retired, Lou and Tram, and many people are clamoring and wondering, going, you're going to have a ceremony to honor Pudge Rodriguez. Most people are not in favor of Pudge's number being retired as a Detroit Tiger. So I'm interested to see if you ask that. I'll sit back and listen, but maybe we'll talk about it a little bit after the interview. But in my quick opinion, you don't dishonor Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker because of the sheer fact they've done quite a bit, and baseball has yet to honor them. So I don't think that the Tigers, I think you'd piss off a lot of people if you retire the jersey of Ivan Rodriguez, the head of two guys that played a long time in your organization. That would be probably a terrible thing.
Pudge should not have a statue made of him or his jersey number retired, even if Allen and, Lou Whitaker get in, which I believe they should get in too. But Pudge, even after that, I still don't think we'll get a statue or his jersey number retired. Now, we'll see what Ryan Schuiling, after this quick commercial break, has to say about that very matter here on Tigers Talk, episode 75. It's Vito Chirco from Top Cat Sales in downtown Royal Oak. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or your corporation? Well, if so, then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. So get your organization, your school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, the website for Top Cat Sales is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And now joining me on episode number 75 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line, is Ryan Schuiling of the Schuiling Report on the team, 92.1 FM in Lansing, Michigan. Ryan, how's it going today?
Good evening to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
So I listened, Ryan, by the way, a little bit to your show earlier today, and you were discussing these players getting chauffeurs or drivers because, you see these people passing away and these guys in their primes passing away way too young, such as most recently Giordano Ventura, and you feel for these guys and these other players maybe dealing with issues. And to prevent it, you brought up that great point that maybe even a guy like Justin Verlander, why not drive for him? And you said you would drive yourself for him. And guess what? I would too, by the way. That's how much I think of Justin Verlander.
Well, one time I did have my chauffeur's license. It was required for being a taxi driver in Mount Pleasant, one of the odd jobs I've had pursuing this crazy career in sports broadcasting. But yeah, on a serious point, this is something that the Tigers have implemented, although it doesn't get talked about a lot. You might recall Miguel Cabrera having his issues with alcohol, and in particular at the end of a season where they were in a pennant contention. To further solidify the point, Miguel Cabrera at spring training had a bottle of tequila or whiskey. He told police to shoot him, and he had a couple of incidents there. Dave Dombrowski had to bail him out of jail at 5 a.m. And there was a domestic assault, which I believe was his wife hitting him. And there were a lot of problems there. Now, Miguel has those issues in check. He's enjoying a renaissance in his career. He's got somebody that's basically responsible for handling him and I believe transporting him around. And I just think it's a great policy to have. Now, the problem you run into is not so much these guys, during the season, their travel's provided for. There's not a lot of off time or downtime. And they're driving in the United States. The problem goes when you go to some of these countries that don't have as highly developed highway systems, road safety, vehicle safety, and you're playing kind of by their rules in the Dominican Republic, in Puerto Rico, and in a lot of these Latin American countries. And it's a much more dangerous endeavor. And I made the point earlier on my show that you were referring to, that the Dominican Republic has the highest fatality rate in roadside accidents in the world. And we've seen not only Giordano Ventura, but we also saw with Marte, and before that Oscar Taveras with the St. Louis Cardinals, unfortunately meet the same end. And I do think it's time Major League Baseball clubs step in, because these guys are investments. Let's be honest. They are worth a lot of money, and you have to do what's necessary to protect your investment. I think you'll see more teams now restricting the amount of driving and where these guys can drive, especially during the off season.
And Ryan, guys being lost way too prematurely. And Ryan Schuiling is on with me, dropping the knowledge right away. And you brought up Miguel Cabrera, his issues of the past. And I love Miguel Cabrera, and I loved Ivan Pudge Rodriguez, who was voted in to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in his first try. And, I had some problems with it at first, just thinking about it. And once I dove deeper into the stats, into what he did as a Major League Baseball player, I kind of started to believe that he did deserve to get in via the first ballot. Now, what is your stance upon that, about Pudge getting in via his first try?
To me, the only question regarding first ballot status for Ivan Rodriguez is the steroid question, which for Pudge, I separated this on my own program into 5 different levels. I call them DEFCON 1 through 5. 5 being the base level where a player is clean, there's been no insinuation or accusation from anybody in any circle that they ever used. Doesn't mean they have, but there just hasn't been any kind of doubt or suspicion. And I think you would attach that to players like Ken Griffey Jr. and Derek Jeter from that era. There's the second level where I think there's whispers about a guy based on his appearance, whether it's Jeff Bagwell or Mike Piazza with acne on his back, or Pudge Rodriguez showing up to spring training immediately after they started testing and he lost about 30 pounds. There are doubts and suspicions and eyebrows raised, but all you've got is basically observational evidence. But I think there's a fine line between that level and that tier 3, kind of a yellow light district I would talk about, where a player is directly implicated by a credible source. And that would be Pudge Rodriguez by Jose Canseco in his book Juiced, which every player that was alleged to have used steroids in that book, one of 2 things has happened. Either 1, there were no lawsuits filed for libel or slander against Jose Canseco with the publication of that book, or 2, they have been proven affirmatively to be steroid users, whether that's Alex Rodriguez or Mark McGuire or on down the list, Juan Gonzalez strongly suspected as well. There's no direct proof attached to Ivan Rodriguez. And I spoke recently with a pitcher who graduated from the same high school as I did, Grass Lake here in Michigan, Tim Crabtree, who pitched for 4 seasons with the Rangers, and Pudge was there as a catcher. And I asked him point blank directly, did you ever see or suspect or witness Pudge Rodriguez taking performance-enhancing drugs, anabolic steroids, anything like that? And Tim said flatly no. Now, he didn't offer the same kind of assertion for Alex Rodriguez, but he did go to bat, literally speaking now, for Pudge. So I think Pudge is in that kind of gray area, that third tier. There's not an evidence trail like you have with Balco and Barry Bonds, or the Andro and Mark McGuire, his point-blank confession, or the top level, which would be a positive test, whether that's Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Ryan Braun. Those 3, to me, should be permanently banned from the Hall of Fame because they tested positive for steroids during an era of baseball where that was against the rules of the game and they knew it. Pudge played in that kind of purgatory era where steroids were, if not allowed, they were kind of placidly condoned by Major League Baseball, by Bud Selig. They turned the other cheek. They didn't do anything. They didn't institute a policy. And I think it's an unfortunate byproduct of that era that some steroid guys are going to get in. But I made the comparison that you got to be like a traffic cop, and you're not going to pull over everybody that's speeding, but that doesn't mean you stop enforcing the speeding laws. And for Pudge Rodriguez to get in first ballot, do I have reservations like you do? Yes. But I think short of verifiable proof, I don't mind him getting in. Now, did he use steroids? It's quite possible that he did, but we can't be judging the ballot on possible. I think you have to have probable, a preponderance of the evidence, and I think that evidence exists for guys like Bonds, Clemens, and McGuire.
And I like, too, the fact that, you know what, if guys get suspended once, I would say they're not eligible then. They're totally discounted for Hall of Fame election eligibility. I think that should be the case, too, going forward. And a 2-time offender, especially like Manny Ramirez, being suspended twice, he deserves no consideration for the Hall of Fame, and it looks like he won't ever get in, and rightfully so. And now, I wanted to bring up this case here, too. You had spoken of Bud Selig, former Major League Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig, who oversaw the steroid era. And now he's been voted in via the 2017 Today's Game era ballot. So with that being said, that's a reason right there where you could say, hey, Pudge deserved to get in because of that right there. So, I mean, do you weigh that too a little bit and take that into account when, you know, you consider whether or not Pudge should have been elected in his first try?
I couldn't agree with you more. I am staunchly against the induction of Bud Selig into the Baseball Hall of Fame because he was responsible for either directly, indirectly, passively, however you want to phrase it, for the steroid era. He could have stood tall. He could have stood up for what was right, and not just for the fans and people watching the game, but for the players themselves and the health risk that steroids poses. And we've seen it. It shortens lifespans. It deteriorates the body. This goes all the way back to the NFL days and why the NFL banned steroids as far back as 1988, because Lyle Alzado, while he died of cancer, he also suffered the after effects of steroid use. And this also has implications on the mental and psychological state of a person and an athlete. And it has adverse long-term complications and effects. You can go to the world of pro wrestling. And Macho Man Randy Savage, who spoke out vehemently against steroid use, viewed it as the ultimate mistake in his career. It was very much encouraged because those guys had a brutal schedule, almost every other night wrestling in a different city for the WWF, which for a long time in the 80s, either, again, tacitly condoned steroids or encouraged their use. And a lot of these wrestlers are dying by the age of 50 or so, and I think it was in the best interest of the health of the players that steroids be banned from baseball. So any way you look at it, Bud Selig was a failure, an unmitigated disaster. On this particular issue, it is the biggest stain on the game since the Black Sox scandal and the gambling era that almost derailed the entire sport that Kennesaw Mountain Landis had to rescue them from. But since that time, 1919, this is the biggest black eye for Major League Baseball, and I do not support the Hall of Fame induction of Bud Selig as a result.
Now, how about the Tigers now honoring Pudge as a Hall of Famer, retiring his jersey number potentially? What is your take on that? Because I'm of the belief that he does not deserve that to happen because he didn't play long enough and didn't have a great tenure statistically when you look at his numbers offensively. I know he made the All-Star games and whatnot, but really outside of his first year in Motown in '04, really outside of that, his numbers weren't standoutish all the time.
Pudge joined the Tigers at a very important time for them, and I'm very glad they acquired him. He lent credibility immediately to the Mike Ilitch era of baseball that had suffered through the after effects of the Monahan era. And it had basically been 10 years since 1983 that the Tigers were basically irrelevant in Major League Baseball, and that was tough to take. I remember as a young person, the Tigers were it, man. The 1984 Tigers were rock stars. I waited in line 2 hours just to shake the hands of Alan Trammell and Lance Parrish, and most people listening might be too young to remember that. I remember those days. The Tigers are almost back to that level of relevance, and it's largely due to Pudge Rodriguez taking a chance when he was the first free agent to really do so. I remember how shocked people were. Juan Gonzalez could not get out of Detroit fast enough. He wanted nothing to do with Comerica Park or the Tigers organization. Pudge gave the Tigers a chance, and he should always be commended for that. His arrival in Detroit really motivated Maglio Ordonez and Carlos Guillen and several others to come in, and that turned into a 2006 American League pennant. All that being said, you make a valid point. His years spent in Detroit did not mark the highlight years of his career. Those were spent with the Texas Rangers, not only by quality, but also by quantity. He's going into the Hall of Fame as a Texas Ranger with that hat on, and I don't begrudge him that. But I think it's a little bit different question when you talk about retiring his number. Is he a Hall of Fame player who played for Detroit? Yes. Is George Kell's number retired for the Tigers? No. The numbers that are retired for the Tigers are guys that spent the vast majority of their careers in Detroit, wearing the Old English D. Al Kaline, Hal Newhouser. You look on down the list. Ty Cobb didn't have a number, but he's got a statue. Charlie Gehringer is another Hall of Fame Tiger. Mickey Cochran, before they had numbers. And Willie Horton, for the social significance he had during the Detroit riots of 1967, has his 23 retired. I think the standard should be a little bit higher. It always has been for Detroit. I mean, when Whitaker and Trammell, 1 and 3, are not retired, I don't know how you can retire Rodriguez in his 7 just because he got into the Hall of Fame, when I believe Whitaker and Trammell meant much more to Tiger lore and culture and winning a World Series, which Pudge Rodriguez did not do. My opinion might change had they won it all in 2006. But I think it might be where you honor Pudge. Maybe his name gets put out there, but you don't retire number 7.
Ryan Schuiling on with me on episode number 75 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And Ryan, let's dive into the current roster now and look at their latest acquisition of a Mikie Mahtook, who is a guy that could be playing center field come opening day. What are your thoughts on him potentially being the starting center fielder?
I say pump the brakes. Mikie Mahtook had a very good kind of cameo debut season 2 years ago with the Rays. He put up some outstanding numbers in terms of OPS, and it looked like he might be a viable all-around threat at that position, center field, which is so important on any major league roster. That being said, a year ago, he had kind of a sophomore slump and definitely resembled more of a minor league guy that was in out of his depth. I look at a guy that hopefully isn't what the minor league scouts call, quote-unquote, just a guy, but there's a very real chance that he is merely organizational depth. So with Mahtook, Tyler Collins, they've waived Anthony Gose. I'm high on Jacoby Jones. I talked about this with Tony Paul, the Detroit News today. I think Jacoby Jones is your opening day starting center fielder in 2018, but he needs another year of seasoning at the AAA level that I think will benefit him immensely in terms of confidence, in terms of knowledge of the strike zone, recognizing secondary and third pitches from guys that can get him out, and not having the big hole in his swing and striking out at a clip that we saw him a year ago. I think there's loads of potential there for Jacoby Jones, but I don't think 2017 necessarily is a year that you should put that kind of pressure on him. There are a couple of guys in free agency that are still available. Tony brought up Peter Borges. I would be content with a guy that's a defensive specialist there, got some speed, could hit in the 9-hole in the order, can get on base, maybe steal a couple bags, but mainly maintain center field defensively there between Upton and JD, which I think is the primary concern defensively and on the diamond heading into spring training for 2017. And that's, of course, leaving alone the pitching staff, the starting rotation, and the bullpen.
As you said, Borges can do it defensively, cover that spacious ground in Comerica Park. Now, they've thrown around some people have thrown around the name of Austin Jackson. I'd say almost anybody but Ajax coming back. I don't want a reunion with him. Now, Borges defensively can get it done, and then you had mentioned, too, in center field, Jacoby Jones being more of that candidate for 2018 because of his K rate, becoming a better hitter, which you think he'll grow into if he's given the chance to do it, to start full-time in 2018 instead of in this upcoming season. I don't think he's ready either offensively. And then you could also look at him defensively. How would he even do out there, defensively at spacious Comerica Park? I don't think he's ready with the glove either to field that position on a consistent basis.
Yeah, there's so many factors with Jacoby Jones right now. One, you're asking him basically to transform and learn a new position, which he's still in the process of doing. That's a work in progress. He was a shortstop. They've kind of instructed him on the outfield, left field in particular, but also center field. We saw Nick Castellanos being a good teammate, a good organizational guy, learning the left field position. It's not his primary craft, but Nick was open to that, and I give him credit for that. But he's a third baseman. He's getting better there, and I think he can be counted on now as an everyday third baseman. Jones is a different story. Center field is a different position. There's a lot more communication. You're the captain of the outfield out there. You've got the calls over the left and right fielder. You've got to know the dimensions. You've got a lot more ground to cover. You've got cutoff men. You got to know how to hit. And on top of all of that, you've got to produce offensively at a clip that they're hoping that he can contribute. And Cameron Maben, I agree with Tony Paul on this point. He's a guy that you could count on in that leadoff spot or two-hole behind Kinsler as they adjusted the lineup throughout the season. He could patrol center field when he was healthy. I recognize he's a big injury risk. But to go from that to Jacoby Jones, to put all those expectations on Jones, all that pressure, it's enough for him to have to hit at that level, which, again, it's something he's working on. Defensively, he's a totally different animal. He is not a center fielder by trade. You need a guy that you can count on this year, right now, from opening day forward, that's going to be, for the most part, a starting center fielder. I don't mind maybe platooning a Tyler Collins in on occasion, but I want a guy like a Borges or whoever. Again, they can hit in the 9-hole. They don't have to hit the lights out of the ball. But if they can patrol center field, give you a good 120 to 130 games there at a good value, then I think that's what the Tigers should be looking for before they get to spring training.
Yeah, Borges does look like he's the best option on the open market to start in center field come opening day. Now, the roster as it stands right now, what is your most optimistic viewpoint on the Tigers going into this upcoming season? And then also, what's your most realistic outlook of the club in 2017?
That's a key distinction. I think optimism and realism, let's see where those two meet. What's the nexus there? I think had the Tigers been, for the most part, healthy a year ago, which they were not, they had multiple injuries for long periods of time. Nick Castellanos, J.D. Martinez, Jordan Zimmerman, the list goes on. And that severely impacted their ability to get some positive momentum going and win ball games on a regular, consistent basis. My biggest concern coming in is health-related. Optimistically, they can win the division. Absolutely. If everything breaks their way, if the rotation stays healthy, if Joe Jimenez takes a step forward and you can rely on him to be a setup guy for Francisco Rodriguez at some point this season. You got Bruce Rondon, who I think took an enormous step a year ago as being a lockdown option toward the back end of that bullpen. I'd like to add another dominant left-hander to the mix down there in the bullpen. That'd be nice. I think there's room for growth there and a couple of question marks. I'd like to pair the roster of Pelches, as I've called them. Somebody suggested to me that on Twitter. I love it. That's Pelfrey and Sanchez combined, adding up to a square sum of 0. I have no hopes for those two. That is a sunk cost and lost money that's just affecting the payroll right now. The biggest question for me as kind of a pivot point in that rotation is Jordan Zimmerman. If Verlander can be counted upon to do anything close to what he did a year ago, which he was remarkable, he was arguably the best pitcher in the American League and very well should have won the Cy Young Award. You got Fulmer coming back off for a fantastic rookie campaign, but it's a lot to ask to replicate that level of pitching in year 2. When he made that big jump in innings, I wouldn't be surprised by a regression from him on some level. I expect a step forward definitely from Daniel Norris and definitely from Matt Boyd. But Zimmerman, you need to eat those number 2 starter innings So you're not putting as much pressure on those young guns coming up in Fulmer and Norris and Boyd. If those guys can be counted upon to be 3, 4, 5 behind Verlander and Zimmerman, now I think you're cooking with gas, and now I think you got a Tigers team that could definitely win 90 games. I really do.
And Ryan Schuiling with that. Thanks for all the time on episode 75 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Really appreciate the time. Anytime you need it, I'm glad to check in. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you much. You have a good one. And back here on episode number 75 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Always a great time having Ryan Schuiling on to talk with us, and he can go on, and man, makes so many great points and can speak eloquently. I mean, can do it all. I mean, we can praise him all day long, can't we?
Well, Vito, all I remember was thinking to myself, well, he'd make the same points I made earlier.
Oh, you're trying to go with that now. Oh, my God.
Oh, so when Ryan Schuiling says
when he says it's a different story. Yes, it is.
Oh, talking about
Doc.
health. The one point that he made that was great, that I didn't bring up, was Jimenez, but I don't really believe.
Yes, we didn't. Neither of us brought him up.
Jimenez is probably going to be in the minors. I think they want him to pitch in AAA, and I think it's best served to let him get some seasoning, because remember, he's got one pitch that he utilizes, but he does it very well. If he can add a pitch, be a little bit more consistent, then maybe with some seasoning, because you don't want to bring up a guy too early and have him flame out, because there's been a lot of pitchers that they've maybe thought about bringing up that maybe just aren't ready. Because you got to remember, major league hitters can hit fastballs. I just haven't figured Jimenez into the plans for this season, but definitely in 2018, I do believe that there's a strong chance that he could improve that bullpen. It's just one of those things where they need to improve that bullpen so much quicker. That's why a guy like Jimenez, who's, doing some things, is needed quickly, because there's not that much in that bullpen. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Ryan does a great job, and he definitely does great interviews. Check him out. 92.1 FM, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Absolutely great stuff from him on episode 75. And another thing I wanted to bring up to you, I had spoke earlier on this podcast about Justin Verlander being named the opening day starter for a 9th time now in a Tigers uniform, and he is right up there with the best of them in Major League Baseball right now. King Felix already has 9, I believe, probably going on number 10, Verlander going on number 9. Now, in Tigers franchise history, Verlander is right up there too, and I had mentioned he's second all-time behind one notable name that pitched for the Tigers in the decade of the 1980s, a great decade of baseball for the Tigers. Now, you might get this name because I just kind of teed it up for you. But here's a trivia question. Who is first all-time in opening day starts made in a Tigers uniform?
All right, Vito, great question. One of those things where I know that Justin Verlander's second most all-time. I kind of would argue that maybe you don't announce that, but I would like to see what he does in spring training. Imagine now he goes out there in spring training and gets rocked for a couple starts, and you have Jordan Zimmerman, he goes out there. I think it's a nice, honorable thing that Brad Ausmus did, but I just don't agree with it. But in terms of who started the most, I know there's been a lot of guys that have pitched quite a bit with the Detroit Tigers, but if I'm just going to take a stab at it, I'm going to guess Jack Morris.
Wow, you are just brilliant, my man. Now, I thought you might have almost said Jack Norris. Do you remember when you said that? You combined Jack Morris and Daniel Norris, both really good starting pitchers. But one guy won the most games in baseball in the decade of the 1980s. That is Jack Morris. Quite the name, a guy that is still not in the Hall of Fame. Trammell and Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame. Jack Morris should be in the Hall of Fame. As Ryan Schuiling said, remember, he was talking about whether or not Pudge should have his number retired by the Tigers. He shouldn't. Wasn't there long enough. And he did his really big-time stuff with the Texas Rangers. That's what he's going into the Hall of Fame as a Texas Ranger, with the Texas Rangers hat, deservingly so, because he did his highest level of production, his Hall of Fame caliber production with the Rangers. His numbers with the Tigers were not outstanding outside of 2004, as I said, with Ryan Schuiling. So, Pudge Rodriguez, as I said earlier in this podcast too, should not have his number retired, should not get a statue, and will not, and even after Trammell and Whitaker get their due, because they deserve it more than anybody right now, more than even Jack Morris, I think, and you can make the argument Jack Morris should, but his ERA is a lot higher, and I know he won the big games, but I think Trammell and Whitaker going in together and being honored together by the Tigers would be so well done by the Tigers franchise. Such a great PR thing.
Now, speaking of great PR, are you into the whole Tigers Caravan thing? The last couple years, I've kind of seen what they do. They go around town. They go from Grand Rapids all the way to the auto show. They showcase, obviously going along with Tigers Fest. They try their absolute best to let the people get excited, start the process of getting people excited for baseball for the upcoming season. But I just haven't been into it. I've never really gone to Tiger Fest. I've never been to a stop where they serve people lunch or anything like that. Are you into Tigers Fest? You think it's something they need to do? Because for me, I'm always of the opinion that, hey, these guys can have one opportunity, get them all together in one place, and You know, obviously I respect the fact they go to hospitals, they do other things in the community. But for me, personally, I just like to gather everybody, one event, Tigers Fest, make it an all-day thing, let us go around and get some autographs, talk to people, have interviews, all in one shot. But to do it all across a whole caravan and a week-long thing, just for me personally, I'm not really that much into it.
Well, I went to Tiger Fest. It's singular. Tiger Fest, you would think it's Tiger, so it's Tiger Fest is how they call it. Anyways, Tiger Fest, you know, okay, I'm sorry to do that to you, Doc. But anyways, I went to Tiger Fest, I believe it was at Cobo Hall, way back when they were bad. So I'm speaking of when they were irrelevant completely, probably even before the 03 campaign, before the 04 season, some really bad campaigns where I went to the Tiger Fest. So in the early 2000s, where the notable names were Shane Halter, how many bad names? Jose Macias, Davey Cruz, Dean Palmer, Bobby Higgins, and those were the highlights of those ball clubs back in the early 2000s. And Dombrowski, he really started the trend of winning baseball. He developed that here, and Pudge Rodriguez helped turn the franchise around by coming to Motown when nobody thought he would. As Ryan Schuiling said during our interview, you know what? Nobody really believed he would sign on the dotted line with the Tigers. I believe he got 4 years, $40 million in totality, which was a lot of money back then for a guy that was not coming off of a great stint of baseball. Now, he had a good 03 campaign, but I'm saying in terms of games played, he wasn't playing as many games anymore from that period of 2000 to 02 with the Rangers. Signed with the Marlins, kind of a reclamation project there, and nobody wanted to take a chance on him. The Tigers did. He turned in a great 04 campaign with the Motown Bengals and helped right the ship and get the Tigers to the 06 World Series on a team that really had a major influx of youth. So we have to credit Pudge for all of that, but he's not going in as a Tiger to the Hall of Fame. Will not have his number retired and doesn't deserve that either, as Ryan Schuiling said. But anyways, to describe Tiger Fest, what it has been for me in the past, it was always a fun thing as a child growing up because my first passion was for the Tigers. The Tigers are the first thing that really got me going on a daily basis, man, that I kept in tune with and wanted to check out every single game during the summer, would stay up with my dad and my brother, and we would sit down and watch Tigers baseball. Nothing like it still for me to this day, and I am almost 24 years young already. Can't believe how time has flown by. But saw a lot of bad Tigers players and teams back then. Luckily now you have a lot more relevant teams, and the Tigers, you know, the caravan thing that they do, I like how they're going to local hospitals and helping out individuals who are less fortunate and just going around town, going around the state and kind of showcasing who they are. People can kind of get to know who they are, what their personalities really are, because you can't really realize that from just watching them play a Major League Baseball game. You can't tell based on that. You can through the caravan. And I like how they do that. Now, will the team be relevant, though? You know, the players are a lot more relevant than when I went to the Tiger Fest, but, you know, did they really deserve to go around town and have a good old time, you know, through the caravan when the team might not be that relevant? And as we talked about before, and Doc failed to do so, and I probably failed to do so as well, it's tough to convince the masses right now that the Tigers will be a highly relevant ball club outside of maybe having a slim shot of making the wild card. That's about it right now that I see out of the Tigers and my most optimistic outlook on the Tigers. And they did pick up Mikie Mahtook and a guy that struggled last year.
How could you think he could be a legitimate starter? Everyone knows.
I know. But the thing is, who is it going to be? Like Ryan said, he already put to rest the discussion of Jacoby Jones. He made a really good point saying not only does he have to cut down on his K rate and become a better guy at the plate, but also, as I brought up too, so I want to take that into account. I did bring it up as well. You know what? Can he even field the position adequately out in spacious center field at Comerica Park? I mean, I don't think Jones is ready for that transition to do it full time as a starting center fielder. So if Jones is out of the discussion, if Anthony Ghost, you know, who's been DFA'd, he's out of the discussion, well, who are you going to turn to start full time in center? And maybe resort to that platoon, a platoon we don't really want to entertain the idea of, but that is likely to happen at this point. And that would be Tyler Collins and a guy like Jacoby Jones or Mikie Mahtook, as I like to say. So we'll see what he can do. He can field the position, hit better. Now, not in 2016, but in 2015 when he first came up, Mahtook. So this guy, hopefully he returns to that kind of performance at the plate. If he doesn't, he'll be highly irrelevant and demoted to AAA really quick as well. And that's a scary thought. What to do in center field? Do they have enough options internally? They probably don't. So maybe they go out and get Peter Borges, a guy that can field adequately out there and at least be an upgrade in center field defensively over the likes of Jacoby Jones and Tyler Collins, Doc.
All right, in the upcoming weeks, what is Vito going to tap into in the world of baseball? Are you going to look at what's going on around the AL Central? Are you going to be focusing in on the Tigers? I feel like the Tigers are kind of set. There might be minor moves made here and there. Are you going to start picking into the rosters of the other clubs and what moves they've made? What are you going to be picking into for the next couple weeks?
Well, Vito is going to tap into this looming trade rumor involving Jose Iglesias going somewhere now, not to a specific team, but it looks like they might be willing to deal Jose Iglesias, who, through avoiding arbitration, got a one-year deal for $4.1 million, I believe, and a nice deal for him. So a bump in salary, a bump in production, you could say, almost defensively at least in 2016. His bat is still not where it's supposed to be, and now they might be truly entertaining the thought of dealing Jose Iglesias, this guy that's a youngster, very good rating in terms of UZR, ultimate zone rating defensively, a very highly regarded defensive metric. So he can do it all with the glove. Was even a nominee for the Gold Glove in the AL at shortstop. But will they move on from him? We'll see about that and maybe give Dixon Machado the full-time starting job at shortstop because he is out of minor league options, which means he will have to go through waivers and he will be claimed off of waivers. He will be. He's not going to be able to dip through that and be unclaimed. And that's a scary thought for the Tigers, losing him completely when they think he might be something of worth come opening day of 2017. So we'll have to dive deeply into that, into what these other rosters are shaping up to be. And we send our condolences to the Giordano Ventura family and friends and the KC Royals franchise for losing that young starter who was a guy that was up and coming. And always sad to lose a guy, no matter if he's in his prime or not. And it can be clearly said that Ventura was in his prime too. So a big-time loss as a family that the Royals are, and also for the franchise on the field, with now losing his performance, which they direly needed in 2016. And I think they would have, and they really would have counted on him for a lot in this upcoming season too, Doc.
Well, now, if you don't perform on the upcoming podcast, if you fail to deliver, I'll know I won't have any regrets if I have to let you go because you can always go down to the Dominican and be a Dominican Uber driver.
There we go, make some big-time cash. And Ryan Schuiling, how about that? He had his license, would drive around when he was at CMU, I think he said. I mean, quite the storyteller there, dropping some great anecdotes. And listen to that interview. You better listen to that interview I did with Mr. Ryan Schuiling of the team 92.1 FM and in Lansing. A great show to tune into weekdays from 1 to 3 p.m., as you noted earlier too, Doc.
All right, Vito, I look forward to talking to you next week. Talking baseball. We'll be here throughout the entire offseason, right up until the time the season starts, and we'll keep this bad boy rolling. 75 strong, man. Good stuff.
Sounds good, man, and thanks to everybody out there for tuning in to episode number 75 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Adios, amigos.